my wife and I sat down, so we were like, hey, let's look at this. What can we financially, one, do this? Can we survive if I'm not working and bringing in an income? And I actually had a job with Sazerac. Sazerac was
Oh,
going to give
wow.
me a job, yeah, here in Jacksonville, and I turned that position down. It was a great position too. Man, I was like,
I know that
I don't
feeling.
go, and if I don't relaunch this, I'm never going to do it. And that was that defining moment. Was like, do I go work for another company or do I go to work for myself? And then I made that decision. It's like, all right, I'm going to go work for myself. It's like, I'm not going to sell anybody else's stuff. I'm going to sell my stuff now.
All right, welcome back to the Liquid Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Monte Burrow. Today, I have with me a gentleman with a huge collection over his shoulder. If you are watching this online, I have my man, Troy Pepito, with me. Troy with Genuine Spirits Company, the founder and CEO of Genuine Spirits Company. Troy, what's up, sir?
Greetings. How are you? Thanks for having me, man. This is awesome.
I am, as they say, living the dream, except for all this pollen that's in the air that's killing me, but I will take
Yeah, it's everywhere. It's that
it.
season. Thank goodness.
Yeah,
I'm ready for some warm weather now. Get the
man.
living in Florida, going to do the outdoor stuff. It's a good time. It's going to be a good summer.
Yeah, definitely, definitely, definitely. But look, man, I really appreciate you spending some of your day with us. As we talked previously, the Liquid Entrepreneur Podcast is all about highlighting and spotlighting the founders in this industry of ours, this thing of ours, right? And being
This
able to
thing, it's
being
a
able to
thing.
yeah, it is definitely a thing. We're going to talk a little bit about that thing as well. But, it's really a great opportunity to learn a little bit about who you are, a little bit about your background and the journey that led you to this thing, right? I think for those who are in the industry, those who are contemplating getting into this industry, those who are thinking about getting out of this industry, your story will probably help at least give them a little tidbit to tap into of helping that decision.
Yeah, more tools for the tool belt. We all need them for
You
sure.
know, you know. So
I'm
Troy,
constantly collecting tools.
yeah, you got to do it to keep, and you got to, and the ones you got keep them sharp.
Always got to have them sharp.
So Troy, look, we know that your life wasn't always about alcohol and the alcohol business. Matter of fact, before there was a business, there was a little kid, Troy, running around and growing up. Where did you grow up? Where are you from?
So I grew up north Tampa area called Crystal River. So it was about an hour north of Tampa. So I grew up here in Florida. I moved here to the state of Florida when I was 7 from California. So I was California born, Los Angeles. Dad relocated, worked for a company in Florida. So I grew up there till I was 18. Immediately left at 18 for the United States Navy, and I did 20 years on active duty. Retired from active duty in 2018 December, and went to work with a distillery called Hotel Tango. Was their director of sales for 4 years. Left them January of 23 and launched Genuine Spirit Company. And then Genuine Spirit Company owns the brand April One. That good juice right there.
Beautiful, beautiful bottle, man.
So that's kind
Goodness.
of in a nutshell, long story short, from how I kind of progressed. And there's a lot of in between.
Yeah, I was about to say that's your point A to I want to say point B, but there's a lot in that middle. And let's kind of unpack some of that, right? So I'm literally going to actually go back to the beginning a little bit again. So you said you grew up you were born in LA, moved to Tampa to Florida when you were around 7.
Correct.
Do you now I know that was a long time ago, but do you remember what it was like when you were told that, hey guys, we're packing up and we're moving to Florida?
That aspect of it, I don't quite remember, but I do
Mhm,
remember arriving in Florida because it
mhm,
was so hot. I do remember that whole aspect of things. It was just like a whole new world. Uh,
mhm,
Trees everywhere, coming from the cities of Los Angeles to this rural area in Florida. Lots of woods, always out. So to keep myself entertained, this was in the 80s.
mhm.
So just kind of talk about my age. So this was in the 80s, and just to keep yourself occupied as a kid, there was no cell phones,
Yeah.
there was some video games, I had stuff, but for the most part, living in Florida, I spent most of my time outside. So I was a tinkerer. I like to get in there. I was climbing trees. I was building tree houses and dumpster diving at the local house that was being built and seeing what we can scrap out of that. And so it was kind of those things. I like to use my hands and build and create things. So as a kid growing up, I was always into taking apart things and reconstruction and putting together. And kind of, so that was, I wanted to be, I guess you could say, a maker. This was, I wanted to create things. And growing up, and then there was business. My dad was an MBA and he had
Mm,
business stuff going on. So I always saw that aspect of it. And I was always interested in being an entrepreneur
yeah.
growing up. And then, so when I left the at 18 for the service, becoming 18 years old and out on your own, you start same thing. I didn't lose my interest. And I was like, you know what, maybe I'll make t-shirts for people because everybody had their custom t-shirts. So I think that a lot of people started making t-shirts and I got down that road and did some things. I was like, man, what am I going to do? And actually, when I lived in Sardinia, so I moved to, so this is in my Navy days. So I left
Hmm.
for the Navy 18. I got stationed in Sardinia when I was 22, 23 years old, and I was exposed to wine
Mm,
and got into the wine, would go to the wineries and watch how they make it and do all these and how they harvest the grapes and everything. So it was interesting to me, that whole aspect of the alcohol industry. That's where I really started peeling back the onion into the
mm,
industry. So I did that, learned a little bit about wine, then moved to San Diego. When I got into San Diego, the beer boom was starting to kick off. You had Stone out in I lived in California, San Diego. So you had, Ballast Point was going out there. So I started getting into the craft beer scene and was really, I got books and I was reading about beers and the different styles and just and that just kept growing and growing. And then I moved to Chicago, where I was a Navy drill instructor,
oh, wow.
knife hand and yelling at kids like. But my partner, drill instructor, knew how to brew beer,
Mm,
so he taught me in our off hours how to make beer, and then
mm,
that just really kind of, man, I can make alcohol just by using these grains and showing me the whole process, the stuff that I really like to do with my hands. And learned about doing that. And then from there, I moved back to Italy. This time I lived in Sicily. So I lived in Sicily for 3 years. And while I was there, I hooked up with all the locals and I was getting fresh grains from
mhm.
Italy and I was getting stuff from Germany for dirt cheap. And I had a little homebrew operation going on in base housing. I had the tanks. I had two 30-gallon fermentation tanks. I built a keezer, a kegerator,
Goodness.
and needless to say, I was a pretty popular guy on the block because
I
people would
would
come over on
imagine.
the weekends and we had growlers and they would fill beer. And that's really when it really took off. And again, still learning about wine and the whole industry. A couple of wine owners were like, hey, how do I get my wine in the Navy Exchange, the military exchanges? I was like, I have no idea, man, but I'll make some phone calls. Found there's a buyer in Europe who manages all the purchasing for alcohol in that area. Hooked them up and they brought the wine in. So I kind of pivoted a little bit. We talked to him before we started the show about
Mm,
pivoting. He said, well, maybe I should be selling booze instead of making booze. Because I built a business plan to start a brewery because that's where I was going to go with everything when I retired on my transition out. And realized there was like 8,000 breweries in America at the time. When we were doing the competitive analysis, I was like, man, people are going to need to move alcohol. So I started peeling back that side of the business, the sales and marketing side, and dove into that versus the making. Because a lot of people will become, I want to be a maker. I want to be a maker. I want to start a brewery. I want to start a distillery. I was like, well, I want to learn how to sell alcohol. And that is a
mm,
key bit in so far the success of getting to the April One brand. So did that for a little bit, and that's how I ended up with Hotel Tango out there. Just
mm,
they're like, hey, can you do for us what you did for those wineries? And they were pitching to the Navy Exchange in America. So there's another buyer. I was introduced to them, and then we just took things off, and I just learned how to work with the military exchanges and sales. And that's so I just got into that sales and marketing game, did that for 4 years, and it's like, well, I have all this a plethora of knowledge I have now, and so I'm going to create my own thing. So I actually started an import business with that wineries and imported 15 pallets of wine into America and beer. Did all that stuff, figured out the shipping logistics, became a license. So I actually had a company called P&M Beverage Imports before I, and then so that's I actually had to put that on the back burner because I got to the United States and I hit those trials and tribulations of the beverage industry. It's the networking. I knew nobody, the 3-tier system, and it was just chaos. It was like, as an entrepreneur, you're just, where do I do next? Where do I go? Like, you have a vision, you're going down that direction, you think you got things good and figured out, and then no, you have to pivot. So I ended up putting that stuff on the back burner, and that's when I officially came with Hotel Tango.
Troy, you are like the Forrest Gump of the alcohol business, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful way when I say Forrest Gump, because that off the cuff that sounds crazy. But what I'm talking about, if you're familiar with the movie, he was always in these positions and places and spaces that are like, wow, you touched everything. And
Yeah,
you literally touched everything
the
from
whole
the
thing.
import
Sales.
side to the sales to marketing to sales to brewing. It's like that's I didn't know that. I didn't even know that before we set this up. That's
Yeah, I
amazing,
didn't
man.
either until I got into it, because it was like, how do I import wine? So I call, the government agencies, the TTB, and how do I get this? And you hire consultants that deal with it. And actually, I don't know where the book is. I got a book that says how to import wine.
Yeah.
And that was one of the big things, is you have to educate yourself in a lot of stuff. And I found so I actually reached out to the author of the book.
Oh wow.
She hit me back, and she was like, yeah, I can help you out. So she does consulting stuff. She actually teaches in San Diego wine sales at one of the universities there. And she kind of taught me how to import and what you need to do and the forms. And so that's kind of how I peeled back that aspect of the import side. So import exports goes together. So I have the basic knowledge on how to move liquor and wine and beer across the ponds. So that was the first piece. And now I was like, all right, now that I'm in the United States, how do I move liquor within the United States? And then I learned that with Hotel Tango. I work with RNDC, Southern Glazers, all those wholesale reps, everything from Hawaii. I owned a huge territory for Hotel Tango.
Mm,
It was all the military globally. So that's 3,500 stores possibly,
mm,
um, that you can get into for alcohol sales. And then, yeah, with all the old wholesalers, and that's a whole new piece on its own, is working with a wholesaler. So I
mm.
learned that whole aspect and what to do's and don'ts. And yeah, just sales was a big piece of the pie. If you in the beverage industry, learn to move alcohol, sell, who to call, what to do on premise, off premise. It's literally, yeah, you have to become a jack of all trades.
Yes, you do. So let me unpack a couple of more things, right? So from the outside looking in, so I'm going back to dad was an entrepreneur. You were a tinkerer. You pulled things together. Your life kind of now and what led up to now was a lot about kind of just moving with a level of freedom in a space, trying to really get out there. When you think of a person who did that level of being that level of ambidextrous in those different spaces, the military doesn't typically come to mind first and foremost because of it's a little bit more regimented, a little bit more disciplined. And not to say that what you're doing isn't disciplined, but just it's a different space. I'm curious, what led you from that 18-year-old, I believe you said, to say, you know what, given what I like to do, I think the military is the route for me. Where was your mind at that time?
Man, so yeah, 18 years old, you trying to figure out where you want to be when you grow up. And I had no idea.
Mm,
So dad was a veteran. He was in the Navy.
mm,
My grandfather was Army. So that's kind of, so I'm half Filipino. So my grandfather fought with the Filipino regiment during
wow,
World War II in Korea.
wow,
And so, and then of course my father joined the Navy, and then he only did a short stint, did 5 years, got out and got in his, and then I just got in 20. So 2000, I joined in 1998, and then
mm,
9/11 happened. So when
mm,
9/11 happened, it was like I was coming in to do my 4 years, get my GI Bill, get out. And that was kind of the thought when I came in. But 9/11 happened in that period of time, and nobody was getting out. A lot of things, the world had completely changed. And I was sitting in the United States military, and we were working. So there was a lot of
mm.
stuff happening. So I was, by the time the dust settled from the war, it was around 2013. I had 13 years in the military already, and just was like, well, I'm going to stick it out till retirement. I go,
Yeah.
it's kind of silly if I don't, because I'm just so close to that point. And while I was finishing out my time, that's when I was kind of focusing on my hobby, was the beer making and getting into all that aspect. And In the military, there's a lot of moving parts, so you have to wear
Mm,
a lot of different hats. So I retired as a chief petty officer, and that's an E7, and they were established on April 1st, 1893. So 130 years of tradition kind of passed on. That's the inspiration behind April One. So
yeah,
on April,
I was gonna ask you that. I heard you say that date, and I said, what is the connection between the brand that you ended up building? Yeah,
so I went back to my roots and called it April One.
yeah,
But being in service, the meaning wearing hats as an entrepreneur, you have to wear all your hats. You got your
yeah.
marketing hat, you got your production hat, and you have your sales hat. You have your logistics, all that stuff. So in the military, that kind of taught me how to manage a bunch of different things at the same exact time. So that was helpful. And then my op tempo, so it's our operation tempo about how much you're working. So when I came out of Chicago as a drill instructor, you work 7 days a week and almost 16 hours a day
Mm.
when you're a drill instructor. So being on that tempo helped me get into the entrepreneur side because you pretty much have to maintain that tempo as an entrepreneur starting out. You're working late hours at night because you're reading and you're educating yourself and trying to figure out those next moves. So that had me for the transition, helped me move into the beverage industry.
So you're in service and you're playing around a bit in the alcohol space. Was it at that point where you knew that once you retired out of service that that's the route you wanted to go, or was it still at that point very much a hobby or something to do?
So I knew that was the point I wanted. So
Yeah.
my last 5 years, I knew I was going to retire. I was like, all right, my time in service is coming to an end. Whether you do 3, 5, 10, 20, or 40 years of service, it's
Hmm.
going to come to an end. So you got to plan ahead and have a vision. Say, all right, your number 5 comes. What's happening when I leave? That door is shut. I have to execute all my next. And I was like, I don't want to go work for the government. I didn't want to do any of this stuff. I kind of want to march to the beat of my own drum. And
Hmm.
that kind of led into making the decision. All right, alcohol is where it's going to be. I have in-laws. I have family. I mean, I have my brother owns a liquor store in
Hmm.
Indiana, so he talked about the retail side with me and how that stuff works. And then just kind of one thing led to another. Every opportunity came around the door. I was either prepared to take that opportunity and go with it, or I would have to pivot. But so when Tango asked me to come on, it was crazy. I was like, this is kind of like perfect when he asked me. So I transitioned out and went straight to work with them and learn, 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 learn.
Talk a little bit to the audience. Tell them who Hotel Tango is, what they do, so they can get an appreciation for that.
Yeah, Hotel Tango is another veteran. So it was started by Travis Barnes. He was in the Marine Corps, got out, and actually transitioned. He was going to be a lawyer.
Mm,
I went to law school, used his benefits to pay for law school. Did that, and then realized he ended up scooping up the first license in Indiana to be a distillery. The laws had changed, and when he was at law school, he realized that those laws were changing and was able to scoop up that license and started his distillery. It's named Hotel Tango. Hillary and Travis. Hillary's his wife, and that's the name they came up with. So they used the phonetic alphabet, Hotel and Tango for Hillary and Travis, and that's Hotel Tango. So they've been going strong. They're the number 2 selling veteran brand in America, right behind Horse Soldier. Those guys. So they kind of paved the way for veteran brands in the industry. So I learned from those guys that had kind of gone through their stuff, and was like, all right, let's create another veteran brand, see if I can compete.
how did they hear about you? Did you reach out to them? Did they reach out to you? Like, how did that even happen?
Funny thing, so my brother-in-law lives in Indianapolis, and we were visiting. I was on Liberty. I was on vacation from the military. He's like, hey, there's this new distillery that opened up down the street. Let's go check it out. And so we went over there, and Travis was in there, and I was asking what Hotel Tango meant with one of the servers, and she was like, "Oh, the owner's here. You want to meet him?" I was like, "Of course." So we started talking, and we knew somebody. Like I told him what I was doing, so we knew the buyer together, and we started conversation, and we just
Mm,
started talking and staying connected. And he would ask me some questions, and then coincidentally, I was in Virginia pitching to that buyer with P&M Beverage Imports, trying to get some other brands that I had met to get in. And his director of sales, or at the time, was also there at the same exact time I was. So coincidentally, he hooked us up, and we just started chatting, and we became friends. And that's Nick. You met Nick. Um,
yeah.
and so Nick and I worked for him for 4 years, and he had came up through the beer world and wholesaler. So he taught me the ropes. He's a business coach. He loves talking entrepreneurship with the alcohol, and I just kind of listened and learned from him, and here we are.
No, I like that piece because sometimes we glass over those elements. But what I glean from that is this: had you not had that conversation, had you not been open to having that conversation at Hotel Tango, that relationship may have never blossomed into you being able to be a part of Hotel Tango. So
Right.
for
Yeah.
those who are listening, it's so much easier sometimes just to stay in your shell and stay in your bubble, but you never know how building relationships with people can help accelerate and move you in places and spaces that you may want to get into. So I think that's a huge gem that some people I don't want people to take that lightly,
Oh
that
yeah,
that element of
networking
it.
is huge. It's
Yeah.
super, super important. Don't burn any bridges because it can get frustrating, and
Hmm.
you just want to burn all the bridges down when you go through through this. But yeah, that's a big piece of the pie, especially working with wholesalers, and then you get to the sales rep level,
Hmm.
and you're networking with them, and you're trying to figure out, hey, I want my product to be in all the top selling bourbon stores in, say, Jacksonville, whatever the city is you're in and targeting, and say, so you're wholesaler, and then you got to go work with their reps and build a relationship with the reps because you want them to sell your product when you're not there.
Hmm.
And so it's one of those key things is sometimes you mesh well with a rep, sometimes you don't mesh well with a rep, and it's okay. Just personalities, nothing against it. And then you get hooked up with the right ones, and then you're like, all right, let's sell some product. And they're like, some of the reps really believe in your stuff, and you become really good friends with them. So I worked with a lot of wholesalers. I became friends with reps, and that's when you recreate your own brand and start that.
Yeah.
That's that nice piece to be able to pick up the phone and have somebody to call. So yeah, networking.
So important. So important.
So
So
important.
So we'll follow the timeline a bit. So retire from service, you're now at Hotel Tango. Did you think that Hotel Tango was kind of going to be? I won't say the end, but like you were going to create your roots there and kind of grow in that business, or was it always a thought to get what you can and absorb from that to pivot to something else?
Yeah. So I when I came on, I was like, all right, this is my job. I'm gonna work with them for 20 years. But
Mm,
then in the back of my head, I go, what if this ended? What would it look like for me? So I've always had that plan B in case that forward thinking was like, all right, if this ends, what do I do next? And so I had actually had the idea of pulling P&M imports off the back burner and rebranding,
mm,
which I did. So I rebranded to Genuine Spirit Company. And because I had that plan kind of already penciled in, literally had it written out on what I would do in launching a brand. And so when that day did come to an end, I was able to execute on my new vision. And that's
mm,
where I went. Because I had Travis had told me that they were pivoting. COVID sucked for everybody. A lot of companies, we did much as we can. And then, so they realigned things that they were doing, and I wasn't part of that realignment. And so me and Travis sat down and had that conversation. He's like, hey, man, um, we're probably going to adjust and pivot. So start thinking about the future. And I was like, okay, I have that. And he goes, this is, so we went through that, and I started executing things before I even actually left. So I stayed on with them for the rest of the year, and then was able to start planning and prepping and doing things, and just rolled on. I actually had a job with Sazerac. Sazerac was
oh
going to give
wow,
me a job, yeah, here in Jacksonville, and I turned that position down. It was a great position too. Man, I was like,
I know that
I don't
feeling.
go, and if I don't relaunch this, I'm never going to do it. And that was that defining moment. Was like, do I go work for another company or do I go to work for myself? And then I made that decision. It's like, all right, I'm going to go work for myself.
When so let's go back to that Sazerac piece for a minute, right? So you have this opportunity in your hand, and then you have this unknown in the
Yep.
other, right? What was going through your head? What was going through your friends and family's head who may have known about it when you were potentially even talking and sharing it with them? Is that, hey, I have opportunities, but I'm thinking about doing this. What were they saying?
Oh yeah, it was just like my wife and I sat down. So we were like, hey, let's look at this. What can we financially do this? Can we survive if I'm not working and bringing in an income? So we looked through the numbers and we're like, yes, we can do this. This is good. Let's execute. and it's a tough decision to do, but it's not, I didn't go into it blindly. I did do some kind of risk assessment. It was like, all right, I don't, I don't want to have to sell my house and do it. So there is some dangers of going down that road because of the unknowns. And I felt confident enough to go back down the road in the beverage industry because I've been working in it. So I was like, all right, now I have people to call. But if I had started out like I did in Sicily when I first started, now I would have took the job. But because I had that education, I had that good foundation beneath me, helped me move forward in that decision. Say, all right, I'm going to do this. It's like I'm not going to sell anybody else's stuff. I'm going to sell my stuff now.
Yeah, I love it, man. I love it. So from the moment or that time point, inflection point when you made that decision, yes, I'm going to do this, to the time the first bottle was out and ready to be on the market, about how long did it take, roughly?
It took so I had pen on paper actually a whole year before I left Tango and went through
Mm,
their first bottle. We launched the brand on April 1st, 2023. My door closed with Hotel Tango on January 1st, 2023.
hmm
So 4 months. I did do some legwork prior to that January 1st date. So I would say at least 6 months,
Okay.
4, 5, 6, maybe 7 months from the time I bought the barrels, housed them, tasted them, blended everything, got to what we wanted, and had it all on the shelf ready to sell. Well, on the website is where we launched it through our direct to consumer and out the door on April 1st. So we're able to do it pretty quickly. So I hooked up with a good distillery in Colorado, also veteran owned, called Copper Sky.
Mm.
He houses all my barrels, all my glass, does all my behind the house, all the heavy lifting. So it's kind of nice to be able to lean on another veteran who's in the space, who's had success, and to help us. And that was his thing, is to help. He has got a co-packing company to help other veterans succeed. So
Mm.
it's nice to be able to
No.
connect. And that's a
So
network thing, another networking through a network to meeting. And it wasn't just like I knew him and another guy connected me and we shook hands. I flew out to Colorado to meet him to let him know that it's real, because he'll get a lot of phone calls on the co-packers like, I want to start a brand. And most people don't even get that brand off the ground. It's,
mhm.
as you know, 95% of brands fail. And then the 5% just, I guess, just know how to execute and keep going. So those are kind of one of those things that I was able to do.
Yeah, those relationships again are super important, man. Um, so you launched the brand out the gate. Was it everything you expected? Was it what were you expecting out the gate, and what did you actually get?
It was terrifying. So when you build a brand, you
Uh,
create a label, you put all this money into building something, and you don't know if it's going to go left or it's going to go right. And when we launched the brand, we went viral. It was crazy. I went to one little meeting. So the Chiefs, they're scattered around, and I had
mhm,
talked to a group of them, and they were like, "This is amazing." And I did that 30 days before launch, and I was advertising, coming soon, coming soon, coming soon. And on April 1st, we sold out everything on
nice,
day one. And that was
nice.
the proof of concept, was like, because you could have been no sales. I could have been looking at my Shopify, cricket, 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 nobody's buying, nobody's buying. And that's what I expected.
Mm,
Because I know that you can't move alcohol. It's hard to sell spirits fast, like especially
mhm,
like going into account and you maybe get them to buy one case or some bottles out of that case. But being able to go direct to consumer, we were able to push 180 cases out the door in one day, less than 12 hours. So we were able to take that to the bank and go, hey, we have proof of concept, we have this, and we were able to buy more bourbon, get more cogs, and then we relaunched the website, and that was all 2023. And now we're going into 2024. We were in a box store, and this is the stories of our lives. You're getting ghosted by a buyer, like
mhm,
all these things. You put things in plans, and I thought everything was going good with that, and then now everything's going left. So it was like,
mhm.
so the brand did good, it went right, but then as we travel down the course of the years on trying to sell alcohol, things happen. So now I got to find a new retail partner, and it's like, all right, I got to pivot again.
Hey, but again, looking at your trajectory, that's something that you pretty much have mastered at this point, the art of the pivot, right? And
Yeah,
it's for a lot of people it's hard, but having had to and then being able to learn from those pivots, because they're going to happen. they're gonna keep, and it's the reality is, you know, how our business is. It's probably won't be the last time we'll have to pivot, right?
Correct.
But
Yep.
being able to know it, to acknowledge it, and to see it, and then to know how to respond to it, I think you actually have a leg up on somebody else that might have been in that similar situation. Um, in the alcohol game, especially when it comes to spirits. So somewhat for not as much in wine and beer, but particularly in spirits, most people who will launch typically will say, I'm either going to go the on-premise route, the off-premise route, right? It sounds like you did a lot of focus on DT, direct to consumer. What led you there out of curiosity, and what were some of the hurdles that you had to go through understanding how regulated this industry is with really tapping into that space?
Yeah, when I first got into the DTC wasn't a really huge thing for alcohol. There was a lot of laws that were in place to be able to do it. You had to go to California to be able to ship alcohol because there were
Mm-hmm.
wine rules in the reciprocating states. So when I was with Tango, we wanted to launch our brand online. So I was able to kind of go down that avenue a little bit on what DTC looks like and working with these companies.
Mm-hmm.
So when I wrote my plan out, it was like, all right, who's my target consumer and where do they live? And how do I get my bottle to them in their hand, in their house? Traditional wholesale is very, very, very hard. You're working
Mm-hmm.
from the funnel top to the bottom, but if you can get direct to your consumer at the bottom of the funnel and then go from bottom up, it's a little bit easier. So I worked with the DTC companies. There was one called Speakeasy out of California. There's a couple of them on the block now. There's Bar Cart, there's Speakeasy, I think it's called Excel
Mm-hmm.
is a company out there, and they all do the management platforms to help do the 3PL. So I linked up with Speakeasy. I knew them. I knew Josh, the CEO. When he first started out, he had started that platform when Tango was just getting into the DTC game, and just sat down with them. They're like, "Hey, we can ship to these states." I'm like, "Good." I go, "That's where my target audience is." Like, I had a target audience. So you think about the military target. My consumers are in this city, this city, this city, this city. Can you ship to those states?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Perfect. So we were able to. So when we announced that, hey, we ship to all these states and you can buy a bottle. So it was nice that our target audience was able to go to the online store, april1bourbon.com, throw that in there, and make a purchase and able to get the bottle in hand without using a traditional wholesaler. There is a wholesaler in there. It's called Liberation Distribution. They are a complete digital uh, marketplace for wholesale. They don't have trucks. They don't have sales teams, so you have to do your own selling. And so the paperwork, everything gets funneled in orders, and purchase orders go through traditional wholesale like it's supposed to in America, and then it goes to the retailer. Speakeasy was the online retailer, so it hit every wicket of the 3-tier system and to get to the consumer. So that's where we started, and then we found where our fans were. Now we took it to the buyers that had where their stores are. Say, hey, all my consumers are your shoppers. Let's. I'm looking for a retail partner. These are my bottom line numbers. This is how we're doing. We took it to the buyers, and they were like, "This is awesome, fantastic. We want to bring you in." So I was able to bring the data to the buyers. It wasn't just blind shooting. So there's got to be a little bit of strategy in there with business. And then they said, "Yes, we're going to bring you in," and that was 4 months ago. So we were supposed
Mm-hmm.
to launch DTC, then brick and mortar, but now we're kind of having to pivot and roll back a little bit and find a new retail partner in those same cities. So that's kind of where we're at right now. It's like, all right, we know our consumers are in these cities. What regional liquor stores are there that we can do business with? We'll take them. Or so we're kind of behind the power curve, but I think that's the best way. Is like, all right, we'll wash, rinse, repeat, do what we did with them. We'll go out, seek who the retailer is, because a lot of people want to be everywhere at the same time. They want to be like, I'm going to sell 1 million cases. This is going to be great. I'm like, no, you got to be strategic. So you got to meet with and again, networking, become friends, and know the buyers and how they buy and how they sell and what they're looking for. And just got to present it to them. If you can present good numbers to them, they'll be interested and bring you in.
Yeah, I love that because it's a lot of people who are starting up brands or have relatively young brands and they're trying to find their way. And I think you've taken a different route than a lot of people have. Using LibDib and some of the other connections is a very interesting way to move product without necessarily you're not usurping or going around the traditional selling points, but it's a way to navigate in a space that a lot of people don't take advantage of. That was very smart,
Yeah, you got to just
very
learn your
smart.
channels, and that was kind of my thing. I go, how can I easily do this without stressing myself out? And I was like, all right,
Hmm.
the partner, I don't have to worry about putting product in bottles. I got a guy that does that. Done deal. And all this stuff's built into the cogs and the margins on, the processing. And so that helped out a lot. And then the traditional now it's right now it's kind of looking at, right, you learn your avenues. So you got the direct to consumer, you got your traditional direct. So I could sell direct to military, which where I was going. And then the three tier was the pecking order of our business strategy. And you saw a little bit of that when I was presenting at the core where we met. Um, so as it was kind of nice though, it's like this channel's working, this channel didn't work. What's our next option? This one. So we have it, it's
Hmm.
laid out. So plan A didn't work, let's go to plan B and let's keep moving.
That's cool, man.
And then the on, yeah, because on off, because you had a strategy with yours where you have a mixologist on your team, right? And
Yep,
you
yep,
kind of wanted to launch your brands on the on-prem side.
yep.
You kind of and use your resources that you have available to you to make the best business strategy decisions you can and
Yeah,
launch your product. And that's
yeah.
a network thing. Again, another network you have, help. Always need help.
Absolutely, absolutely. I was gonna say it's very the brand. Everything leads with your brand, right? What is your brand's purpose? Where does your brand show up? And then building that strategy around that. You know what I mean? So for some brands, on-premise play would make perfect sense. Some other brands, you got to go straight to retail. For other brands, DT like it's and I would say for those who are trying to understand where they fit in, it's just understand that these brands aren't monoliths, right? They're dynamic and there's opportunities to skin the cat in multiple ways. Finding the right way is essential for you. And the other part of it is this is the reality of business, regardless if in the alcohol space or not, is sometimes things just won't work. And then to use our word, you pivot, right?
Mhm.
So there will be some trial, there will be some error. But it's more about how do you pivot and how do you find those opportunities in between those pivots.
Yeah.
Uh, this industry to start something can be somewhat cash extensive, right? Now, unless you were sitting on a mound of cash, how hard or easy was it to really build up and get what you need? Or how hard or easy has it been to even get investment dollars to keep things going? If you're looking for, I don't know if you're looking for investment or not, but and again, I don't want to lead you to the water, but I can give you my experience. It ain't easy. It
It
ain't
is
easy.
not
So,
easy. And
so,
I'm
so
going through
that's
that right now.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It was a little bit of a weight lifted off my shoulders
yeah.
now that we have to pivot. It was like, okay, how do we supply a big box store with product to facilitate the demand?
Yeah.
And so you have to go out and search, invest. If you're not sitting on a pile of cash, you need to go out to the banks and you hear about these SBA loans and
Hmm.
you got to go to this business loan and you got to take them all the paperwork and show the banks. They're like, hey, these are my sales every month. These are my burn rate expenses. And they go, okay, you're doing really well. You're selling product and we can give you a business loan for X dollars to cover whatever year, like a half a year, a whole year worth of your sales. And so it's a lot of you're selling your business to get invest. Well, at least with the bank, you're not. You have to put up collateral, things like that. And the nice thing with bourbon is you can use bourbon as collateral to get loans.
Right, right, right.
Um, so it's extremely hard, and you're constantly talking to people. So there's investing companies there. I couldn't believe how many venture capital firm and angel investor firms are in America. There's just hundreds and hundreds of them. Everything from tech to CPG, where we work out in the consumable space, and they have some of them have dollars to invest in you, some of them don't, or you just came in behind them and they picked another brand to invest in, and you just got to keep going down that line and that list. You write them out, and you're like, cross it out. Said no. Cross it out. Said no. Oh, we got a meeting. There's a potential. Now I'm going to put my salesman hat on, and this is why you should invest in us. And so you got to be constantly preparing. So a lot of managing.
Got to keep going too, because look, guys, those no's will come. But you got to keep moving. Can't take it
All the time. Do
personal.
not take them personal.
Got to
Yeah.
keep moving.
So when you first start a brand, when you get into the VC world, they talk about, they understand. They're like, have you done a friends and family for your seed? Because you got your seed, pre-seed, and you got your series A, B, C, D, and on.
Hmm.
And so you have to take that proof of concept, which when we launched the brand, it was like, okay, we have we have something to take to somebody and go, hey, look, this is, we're doing good. We're off with a bang. I need to buy 60 more barrels. Let's fundraise. Would you want to get in on this business with me? This is the business opportunity. And they talk, and then you get in all this other stuff, a million questions about the company and where you're going and growth and exit strategies and all that. And you just lay it out. Have PowerPoint after PowerPoint or just docs, or you just have conversations, and people are either interested or not interested.
Troy, what do you think ultimate success looks like for you in Genuine Spirits?
Man, ultimate success for me was to get that bottle on the shelf.
Mm.
The big store, brick and mortar. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs' goal is to say, if I can get that product out of my garage project, and get it on the shelf and have it, that was my finally at the top. And you get to, I was at the top of the mountain. I'm right here. I'm like holding on. And then you're just like, you fall. It's like falling without a parachute. And how do I get to the back to that? So I think my success is once I get April One in a big box store, I'll be extremely happy. I can just be like, okay, let's go to work. We got work to do. It's not done, but we're at a position where we can really grow the company.
It's coming, man. Yeah, talk it into existence. It's coming. It's coming. It's going to come sooner. It's going to come sooner than you realize it. And
Yeah,
you are.
yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, you get to that point where you
Yeah.
just like, man, you work so hard and you're just like, I'm done. I quit. Like sometimes you just don't have that energy, but I'm in it. I know the game, and as you said, I guess I've pretty much become a master at pivoting.
Hey, it's a good skill, man. It's a good
So
skill because we all got to do it. And those who
yeah,
get
so I
lost in
sit
the
down,
shuffle,
sit down and just start thinking. You got to
yeah.
deep think and start thinking of the future, and you're like, all right, plan A didn't happen like it was supposed to, and you just kind of pour yourself some bourbon. You sit down and decompress, and just be like, all right, watch some motivational memes on Instagram. You're like, be the tiger, the eye of the tiger. Keep going. Let's do this, and find a new route and keep going. That's all you really got to do is keep going, pivot.
You got to keep going. On that note of pivoting, we're going to pivot for a quick second. It's a little game I always like to play when I talk to founders. It's a little less about the spirits industry per se, but a little bit more about you. And it's called Here Is One of My Favorites, right? So you can think of the first thing that comes to your mind. It doesn't have to be the penultimate, but it's one of. So here is one of my favorite brands. And it doesn't have to be an alcohol brand, any type of brand. Here's one of my favorite brands.
Favorite brands?
Mm-hmm. One of them.
Dogfish Head.
Okay.
Dogfish was a huge inspiration for me to get going with the branding and marketing, and how he had a couple books out that I read. Sam Caglione, I had the opportunity to meet him at his brewery in Delaware one year. He took me through the grand tour, and that brand is definitely one of my favorite brands. Just his idea, it's off-centered ales for off-centered people is his saying, and he makes a lot of crazy beer at the time of the height of the thing, and he did so well that he ended up going and merging with Sam Adams
Mm-hmm.
and those guys, and that's kind of when you're in the beverage industry, and that's kind of where a lot of people want to be. That's where I
Mm-hmm.
would like to be, is to be able to get that big buyout, but really right now I just want to get on the shelf. And then keep going. But it's a very inspirational brand where you get to work with those guys, and I've seen them in action and doing and learning what they do to get to that level. And so that's one of my favorite brands.
Here's one of my favorite songs.
Favorite songs. Actually, I've been listening to a lot of old stuff. Like I had Journey on there. I'm trying to think. Blink 182 is a fun band I like to listen. I wouldn't say I have a favorite song, but I have a group.
Group.
Alternative music typically, R&B, rap. I kind of listen to a lot of that stuff, man.
Yeah.
It depends on my mood. Sometimes I need a classical song and play some Mozart.
Love it, man. Love it. I'm not surprised because I see how you move. That shows up in how you move too. So that's pretty cool. Here's one of
Music's
my.
good for the soul, man. Depends on
Yes,
how
it
your
is.
soul feels, is what I listen to.
Here you've traveled around the world. Here's one of my favorite places to travel to.
Singapore. I
Singapore.
love Singapore. I've been to Singapore 3 times, or Belgium. I've been to
Mhm.
Belgium 5 times, so I've
Mm.
been an Asian and a European. But Belgium is huge in the craft beer. The Belgian beers, that would probably be my favorite country.
I'll tell you this, and again, not to get too deep down the spirit side of this part, but to go anyway, Singapore has one of the best craft cocktail scenes in the world. In
Yeah,
the world. They do
yeah,
some amazing stuff with spirits over there, man.
yeah. I definitely want to go back over there. I'm actually going to Japan in
Mm.
June, so I wanted to go check out their craft cocktail scene, and
Yeah,
I know they're really into that
they
stuff
are.
in the distilleries. So more travels, more learn from go to Japan and learn from the Japanese on whiskey making and
Yeah.
how to be better.
Here's one of my favorite movies,
Oh, Top Gun.
Top Gun. Go figure.
Yeah, actually, Top Gun and then Men of Honor. Men
Okay.
of Honor is a really good story. So those Top Gun would be my fun action video with the movie, but
Mm.
inspiration wise, Men of Honor is good. It's about a Navy diver, African American guy, World War II. Fought his ranks up. African Americans could not be in certain jobs in the military, and just watching him punch through to get to where he wanted to be was very inspirational for me. And I love that movie. It's about he's a chief, so even better.
Wow.
I recommend that movie if you guys are looking for some motivation and running into walls and not getting to where you want to be and punching through. That's a good motivation movie. So I would say Men of Honor. It's got Robert De Niro in it and Cuba Gooding Jr.
Nice. Nice. I think I've seen that now. I think I've seen that. Here is one of my favorite things about launching my brand.
Oh, the bourbon tasting.
Yeah.
Drinking the bourbon, putting together the label. That's the production side, marketing side is the best part.
Okay. And this one isn't meant to stump you, but sometimes people struggle with this one for whatever reason. Here's one of uh here's one of my favorite qualities about myself.
Persistence.
Yeah.
I'm pretty persistent, and it's hard for me. Like if somebody tells me no, that means I'm just going to work harder to get to the yes.
You got to be persistent in life, let alone this business. But yes,
Yeah.
that's good stuff, man. Show them the bottle, Glenn. Show everybody whoever's watching this on YouTube. Show them the bottle. I know you touched upon it, but tell us a little bit again about the naming convention, why you landed with April One.
Yeah, so April 1, 1893, the chief petty officers were established by United States Navy. And for the 130 years, the Navy has been generating chiefs every year. About 15,000 chiefs get promoted. People go their whole careers and never get promoted to that position. So it's E789, it's chief, senior chief, master chief. And so I'm kind of paying homage back to my roots when making chief, and I called it April 1. Plus, this is for all of them. Some of those guys are still out there on deck with the ships, and there's still wars being fought, and they're working hard. So this is a tribute to all of them and my past and their future and everything going on. And we wear gold, so that's where all the gold inspiration comes from. So these are our uniforms. Gold felt actually here's my chief cover.
Say it.
Yeah, so this is the cover you wear. The Chiefs wear the symbol of the Chief, gold fouled anchor with a superposed USN. A lot of people think it stands for United States Navy, but in the Chiefs mess, our fraternity, it's unity, service, and navigation.
Mm.
So those are we use, and that's a lot of inspiration being in the Chief ranks because you live by these words and it's like unity, service, navigation, and you have all these motivational stuff to kind of keep you moving forward. So that's where the Chiefs. I don't think this fits me anymore since I've been. Oh, I look like an old salty with the beanie now.
Season.
Seasoned. I'm seasoned. But
No,
yeah,
that's some good stuff, man. Look, this has been an amazing conversation. Tell everybody again where they can find April One, if they want to order a bottle or two or three or four, where do they go? How best to connect with the brand?
yeah. April1bourbon.com. Spell out the one. It takes you straight to the website. You can order. We are shipping to 44 states now. The only ones we don't ship to is Alaska, Hawaii, those typical Utah. But if you live in Florida, Jacksonville, there's 2 brick and mortar stores that you can go to, but predominantly go online to order a bottle.
So they've made it extremely easy for you all to grab a bottle. So no excuses. Support the brands. Small brands don't become big brands without that support. Go out and support these brands. Troy, this has been an amazing conversation. I appreciate you so much for sharing some time with us. Long overdue. I've been meaning to connect with you sooner. Life happens, but
Life happens.
definitely appreciate you spending some time with
Thanks
us.
for
And
having me. This has been great.
no doubt, no doubt. And you know, if there's anything I can ever do to help support you in your endeavors, please don't hesitate to reach
Always
out.
appreciate it. Yeah, I'll be watching you on LinkedIn. I'm watching you guys do your thing. So.
Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Well, until next time, everybody. Cheers.